Hello everyone, it's Jason Mercer, TREB's Chief Market Analyst, and I'm here at TREB's AGM. We just had a great mayoral panel with mayors from municipalities around the Greater Toronto Area, and one of those mayors is Mayor Frank Scarpitti from Markham, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Glad to be here, Jason.
Now, we talked a lot on your panel about issues affecting municipalities surrounding the City of Toronto, GTA municipalities from the perspective of economic development, transportation infrastructure, and of course housing. And housing and real estate in general is obviously top of mind for our members. We're 55,000 strong at TREB, and we're dealing across the GTA region and really the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And so, from the perspective of a region that's growing by hundreds of thousands of people each year, and a lot of that on the back of immigration, people are moving to the region to take advantage of the diversity of employment opportunities that we have to offer. The first question I wanted to speak to you about through the Markham lens is sort of what's the plan for economic development in Markham moving forward, or medium long term?
So right now we are Canada's high-tech capital, and while perhaps other parts of Ontario have done a fantastic job at marketing what their communities have, and to their credit, they have a basis of high tech. There's no doubt about that. But we're the second largest high tech hub in the whole country. So the first would be the City of Toronto. Second would be Markham and York Region. And in Markham specifically, there's over 1,500 high-tech and life sciences companies that provides employment for over 37,000 jobs in our area. So it's quite impressive. Names that people would recognize, certainly Canadian headquarters for IBM. We have the IBM Software Lab, which is the second largest lab of its kind in the country. We have companies like AMD, over 2,000 employees in that facility in Markham that truly has a significant role to play in that company's global presence. And then, of course, GM just opened up their Canadian Technical Center, where they are going to hire over 700 software engineers, all working on the future car. Since we don't have to drive them anymore, right, we'll be able to do podcasts, we'll be able to watch movies, we'll do whatever we can do in our cars in the future. So we have a very strong basis, I would say, in terms of the companies that are there. What I love about it, the companies themselves talk about an ecosystem.
Right.
It's one thing to have these individual companies in your community. It's another to establish a network, an ecosystem that actually supports the work of each other's companies. So very pleased to say that we have Venture Lab, which is a regional innovation center. They have helped over 2,000 startup companies, and really these startups are critical to the future economic prosperity that we hope to enjoy, not just in Markham, but in Canada. We have Y Space, which is another innovation hub that was opened up by York University, who plans to establish a permanent campus in Markham, but in advance of that wanted to have a place where through their professors, through their mentoring, through their network, they could support innovators in our community. And then the exciting part is really the future employment area for Markham, which we've dubbed the Markham Innovation Exchange. It's 1,900 acres. Wow. At the north end of Markham, and for those that drive along the 404 will clearly recognize the area where Honda Canada has their Canadian head office and distribution center. It's really that whole area to the north and to the east. And it's 1,900 acres. 400 of those 1,900 acres, the City of Markham actually purchased in order to see an employment area that's going to look dramatically different from the industrial parks of the past. We recognize that the economy has changed. There's still advanced manufacturing in Markham, right, but the reality is we want an employment area that's going to support young startups, whether that's in IT, whether that's in clean technology, whether that's in digital media and the film industry. We want to create an environment in both the architecture and what's there to support young talent that we want to attract to our community.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And when I'm talking in the media about the housing market and commercial real estate markets, I mean, one of the things I always point out is that we really benefit in the Greater Toronto Area from that virtuous circle where we're creating jobs across a number of different sectors and increasingly very high order sectors, well-paying jobs, and so that attracts more people into the region. And obviously, Markham has benefited from that. And so as we continue to see, the number of businesses increase, we start to see more startups, we start to see more employment. Obviously, these people also require a place to live, and ideally, they'd be able to live in Markham, so they weren't having to travel long distances to and from work. And so thinking about that, maybe both from a housing perspective and a transportation perspective, what's sort of top of mind for yourself and Council in Markham in terms of getting a diversity of housing supply online and also moving people and goods to and from?
It's a great point, and I think one of the strengths that we have, and by the way, I heard someone else lay claim to this today, but I would just say we're very fortunate in Markham that we are the most diverse city in all of Canada. That's not something we make up. That's something that we get from Stats Canada.
Right.
And we've been lucky in that the people that have come to Markham are highly educated and highly skilled. And in the last census, 78% of the people, it's an oxymoron, but 78% of the people identify themselves as visible minorities. Right. That being said, they've come here highly skilled, highly educated. It's the talent pool that IT companies are looking for. So with the growth and everything that's happened, I would say that a number of years ago, Markham actually did quite a bit to provide affordable housing in that we upped our densities right across the new areas in Markham. So people that would, again, recognize these communities in the East End, the Cornell Community Center, around the hospital in the Cornell Community Center, that whole community, higher density than in the subdivisions that were built in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. Greensboro, Bursey, Cathedral Town, where the cathedral is that major focus. Back when we were approving those plans, we did those at higher density, really truly to try and provide more affordable housing. And that worked actually for many years.
Yeah.
People were able to buy a townhouse versus a single family detached home, which provided a particular product in the marketplace. Who would ever imagine that a townhouse would reach over $1 million in the city of Markham? And so now this housing crunch, it's a crisis. When you have professional people who make a decent salary, who cannot afford to buy their first 500 square foot home, 500 square feet, because it's been priced to a point where they can't afford it, it's a crisis. We have almost 1 in 5 people today who are spending more than 50% of their income on housing. And actually, if you take a look at people that are making $65,000 or less, that actually jumps up to 30%.
Right.
So in trying to come to grips with this crisis, we are seeing federal government to undertake some things, provincial government as well. I think the fact that they've exempted secondary suites, for example, from development charges will bring some smaller, more affordable units, hopefully, into the marketplace. But the reality, Jason, is that all 3 levels of government have to work with industry and with NGOs to try and get more affordable housing in the marketplace. And so over the past few months, we've been meeting with stakeholders, builders, developers, some of the nonprofits that have provided in partnership with the city or others affordable housing units in the past, to try and look at what we can do combined with what's happening at the other levels of government. So I see a bit of hope in inclusionary zoning, that when new developments come forward, there'll have to be a certain percentage of affordable units. There's a balance to that, because if you pick too high a percentage, then again, it drives up the cost for the other marketplace units. So there's a balance to
that unintended consequence. Sometimes.
Exactly, right. So we're going to have to be careful with that one. And certainly some of the things that we've done in the past where we've relieved some affordable housing projects of their obligation for development charges, for parkland, or deferring some of those costs to a later time. And that will all culminate. Our efforts over the past few months will culminate with a affordable housing summit in the new year, and I'm hoping that what comes out of that will be a strategy that will at least provide more opportunities for young people to either rent their first home affordable at an affordable cost, or buy their first home within Markham. We need to keep that talent close to where the work is.
I think that's true, and you know, I've been really happy to see that, you know, over the last couple of years, as you know, the supply issue has really come to the fore, and especially the affordable supply issue, that, you know, we're seeing municipalities like yours really work towards a plan. And I think, you know, your point around collaboration is important, because you can't just get that done at the municipal level of government. And it brings me to kind of the last thing I want to talk to you about today, and that's about, you know, funding. Because, you know, if you're attracting businesses, you're attracting people to live, they need a place to live, whether renting or owning. There's also the infrastructure that underlies that. I mean, you've talked a lot about trying to get the subway up to Highway 7, and how do you pay for that? And you're talking a little bit today about, you know, not wanting to go down the road of something like a land transfer tax, but at the same time, you need to, you know, get some support from other levels of government. So maybe speak to that.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, I think it's important right across the GTA to build a rapid transit system. We have urban growth centers like Langstaff between Yonge and Bayview, south of Highway 7. We've approved a plan there that will accommodate 35,000 residents and 15,000 jobs. Further east, right southeast of our city hall, you have Markham Center between Warden and Kennedy, south of 7 to the 407. Right now, the plan calls for 40,000 residents and 40,000 jobs, and we think that that's probably going to increase over time. This notion of being able to live and work and walk to work, it's a wonderful notion. The reality is there's all different types of needs that families have. Right. You know, sometimes a couple will, you know, one partner will be working at one end of the GTA while the other works in the other end of the GTA. So we need a rapid transit system throughout the whole of the GTA, and I think it's encouraging that we're seeing both the provincial and federal governments come to the table with dollars. When you take a look at the regeneration that's happened in many American cities, and not just the downtown core of those cities, but the metropolitan area of those cities, it's because the federal and state government has injected billions of dollars for those mass transportation and transit projects to happen. So in the last provincial election and in this last federal election, I urged all the party leaders to sign a shovel committing to the Yonge Subway extension. It's the most justified rapid transit project in the GTA in recent history because of the ridership. We have over 2,500 buses jam-packed with commuters every day going down Yonge Street. So it's justified in that. And thank goodness Premier Ford was one of the leaders when he was running that signed the shovel. He's committed to the Yonge Subway in the provincial plan that was announced. And in this recent election, both Andrew Scheer and Justin Trudeau signed the shovel as well. And the shovel was really not to say that we need this support 10 years from now. Right. We need to put shovels in the ground. We need to start this particular project in this term of office. So I'm hoping, even with a minority government, we have the Prime Minister who's committed to it. We have Andrew Scheer, Leader of the Opposition, who's committed to it, that they will see their way to investing these dollars for the Yonge Subway. And by the way, other transit projects that we need. 905, when you take a look at the growth plans for the GTA, the bulk of the growth over the next 20 years is happening in the 905, and investment from both the federal and provincial government needs to begin to reflect the amount of growth that's happening there in order to support it. And
you're certainly speaking to the converted at the Toronto Real Estate Board. I mean, each year we do our outlook and overview report that covers off the region, and we're always looking at those three pillars. So of course, housing, but on top of that, economic development and transportation infrastructure. So I want to thank you for taking part both in our panel today as well as this podcast, and I hope we can do it again sometime. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Treb, but also thank you to all of your members, because collectively they're out there in the trenches every day letting people know about some of the new communities and projects that we have. And at the end of the day, Markham, I think, ends up being a very desirable community, not only for those, by the way, who are buying their homes. In the waiting list for affordable housing, 11,000 people have earmarked that they want to move to Markham. So it's a great community, and I thank your members for the work that they do.
Thank you, sir.